thank you very much, Dr. Addy, for agreeing to answer some of our questions. And I thought we'd kick off with the first question. If you could tell us a little bit about yourself and what initiated your interest in inclusion in research.
Thank you. So my own journey, like most other people's, is quite complex. And I ended up working as an engineer in disaster management through one event or another. But as a mixed heritage Black woman in engineering, I kind of saw how certain voices were marginalized within engineering design, impact evaluation, and assessments. Quite often people don't consider the other identities. They don't just consider disabled individuals. They don't consider women, particularly when most engineers come from quite a privileged background and are male. So kind of being an anomaly in a sector, being an outsider in a sector, made me see what was missing, made me question the normative assumptions, and made me kind of challenge what was going forward. So my own kind of passion about inclusion came from my own identity and my own personal experience of being an outsider. And that started with my experience in disaster management, but it continued in being in my experience during my PhD and subsequent to my PhD. People like me aren't meant to do what I've done. People like me typically don't do what I've done. I'm mixed heritage, working class, disabled. I have ADHD, dyslexia, etc., and I have a PhD. That's not normal, and I'm not doing that to set as a signal of celebration. I'm raising this point as my story is not a celebration story, it's a horror story. There should be more people that come through like me. There should be, my story, I feel like we would get to a point where I could tell my story and go, I have this identity, I have that identity, I had no problems, my PhD journey was fine. That's the story we should be celebrating. We shouldn't be celebrating stories of struggle. And I did struggle. So part of my fight for inclusion is because I don't want people to go through what I've gone through, because I recognize the importance of voice and representation in issues that affect our own lives. So that was very much kind of my passion on inclusion. I started Ladders4Action during my PhD, partly because I was struggling to pick up full-time contracts at university. So I've done various work as, like most Black and BAME individuals, as academics on short-term, marginalized hours contracts that lack security. So I started doing consultancy work under Ladders4Action. And Ladders4Action very much was based upon my belief in action research as a practical way of dealing with complexity, of learning from experience and connecting knowledge and action together. So everything that I do in Ladders4Action is to breach that knowledge theory gap in practical, inclusive and ethical ways. So it came from necessity, but it's kind of grown from there.
Thank you. I think I just wanted to pick up on some of the points you raised in terms of the kind of lived-in experience and how heterogeneous that could be, and therefore making this, potentially quite a complex issue. And it'd be great to hear your thoughts on, how do we capture the heterogeneity? How do we make all of the different lived-in experiences as the experience of somebody who didn't have to struggle through their PhD?
Yeah, I mean, we all have. Sometimes we kind of fall into that kind of argument of hierarchy of oppression. It's not about that. We all have complex identities and complex experiences. And I think while certain kind of voices may be more prevalent in higher education and academia, there's always a kind of difference and diversity. And we want more of that difference and diversity. But we would kind of be foolish to make an assumption that we can ever learn it all or ever cover it all. We are always going to be wrong. Our assumptions are always going to be flawed. So they should always be adapting. They should always be learning. They should always be changing, in my point of view. We will always have work to do, identities and experiences that aren't covered. But that kind of complexity can make some people panic. And I think you need to kind of get to the point, which is quite uncomfortable for many academics, where you just have to accept that you will never know it all. You will never solve this problem and have the ultimate solution or the ultimate theory for doing this. You need to give up on that idea, which many academics might find that quite challenging, and just get to the point that we will be constantly learning, constantly adapting, constantly getting better at what we do. And maybe think of it more as an experimentation cycle. We explore a problem, try something, reflect, start again, do it again. You're constantly in that cycle of experimentation when it comes to inclusion and diversity, because our identities are complex, because the world we live in is complex. Social problems are constantly changing, and there's dynamics behind that. At the end of the day, race and ethnicity are social constructs, and we're social people. And that's a really hard thing to kind of calculate or predict. So when you look at complexity theory, which I draw on a lot to deal with race and equality, there's this idea that the issues that we face are historic but emergent. And that means the issues that we face will always be informed by our past. So going right back to the colonial era and how we value different types of knowledge and how these institutions were built informs where we are today. And we need to recognize those connections and learn from them. But there's a caveat to that. It's emergent because what we did yesterday won't work tomorrow. Yeah, it will always be adapting and changing. And if you try to predict the future based on what's happened on the past, you're always going to be wrong. So you constantly need to be adapting. If you try and create a blueprint, it'll be out of date next week. It will be out of date. It will be inappropriate for other organizations. So move away from that blueprint, move away from that need to find the 10 things that will solve all of your equality problems. You're never going to find it. But that is part of, to me, the beauty of knowledge creation, the beauty of research. We are researchers, and we're constantly striving for better answers and to understand. And this is our business. We should be better at learning about this subject area like we are with all others.
No, I think that's a really good point and a great place to end, thinking about how we move forwards, constantly learning and doing better. So thank you very much, Dr. Addy, for your time.